Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear and see me. I don't see any. Here's some chats coming through. Very good. I'm just going to adjust a couple of things. Okay, I think we're good. Well, good morning from the east coast of Australia. Good evening, good afternoon to people in different parts of the world. Nice to see some familiar names dropping in there. Our internet seems to be a little bit slow this morning, so I hope things go okay. Just trying to get a bigger screen here. Doesn't look quite possible. Okay, so just a sound check. Are you hearing me okay? Before I get going with the meditation. Great. Thanks, everyone. Nice to see all of those messages coming through. So, as we move into the meditation this morning, it's, what we've decided to do is where we can, once we start the meditation, we'll kind of, I think Jayasara can turn the chat box off, so that will help people just refrain from using the chat as they drop into this session, and help people just focus on the meditation. And then after our meditation, we'll open up the chat box for questions, and it would be generally I'm certainly open to answering any kinds of questions, but more specifically, it'd be great if people's questions are related particularly to the Dharma, to the practice, to the meditation, and that would be really helpful for us to stay, focused for this period of time. And sometimes there can be a lot of messages coming through. If you were here last week, there was a lot of different activity on the chat, so it was a little bit hard for Jayasara to actually find the questions to respond to. So just to be aware of that from your end, to not engage in too much chat with each other is actually helpful for us to find the questions as we're scrolling through and respond and use this time as best we can. So I hope that all makes sense. And of course, people will drop in late and not hear that, but we'll manage whichever way it goes. So let's get started with the meditation. Excuse me. Just get a little water. Now, for some of you, it's very late in the evening. For some of you, it might be, a good time in the day or the afternoon, or feeling fresh after an evening's sleep in the morning. So wherever you are and whatever's going on for you, whatever environment you're in, however your day has been, just recognize that however it is, it's okay. Just in this moment, as we come together in this live stream, things are just as they are. And when we prepare for meditation, there's no need to have an idea that we need to change anything per se, but just to come into presence with the way things are as we're experiencing it in this moment. So wherever you are, however you find yourself, just become aware of the body, how the body feels right now. And you don't have to put names or labels on those feelings, just tuning in with awareness and a gentle, open attention to bodily sensations. And usually we become aware, much more sensitive and aware to the posture our body is in, the particular pressure points of that posture, the weight of the body on the seat of the cushion or the chair, the sensations of contact where our limbs cross over each other, hands in the lap or feet, legs crossed on the floor. You might become aware of any particular tension held in the body. If there's an injury somewhere or a tightness in the muscles, simply whatever appears in consciousness related to the body, notice it and breathe with it just as it is. And you naturally become aware of the sensations of the in and out breath as we give attention to the body. Unless there's an acute pain taking up all of our attention, usually we become more aware and sensitive to the movement of the breath, which is this regular pattern in the bodily experience. So however the breath feels for you right now, just become sensitive to that movement of air moving in and out of the body naturally, not in a forced way, but just as the body is comfortable breathing in a natural way. It's an automatic process, an autonomous process. So we don't need to interfere with it to change the breath in any way. We just want to become sensitive to it. And as you become more aware of the body and the bodily processes, you'll start to recognize perhaps places in the body that is holding tension at a more subtle level. And as we do, as we become aware of that, as we remain sensitive to the in and out breath, it seems a natural process that tension we've become aware of just eases out. This habitual tension we find maybe in the hands or the forearms, the legs or the back, the face, the jaw. So it almost seems like the body, if it's not given messages to do something, to perform an activity, if we're not intending to use the muscles to push or pull, but by just paying a gentle, open attention to it, as I said, unless there's an acute pain somewhere, the tendency is for it to relax. So just start to notice that as you pay attention to the body and the breath. There's a certain autonomous relaxation response that can happen. And it can be subtle and can continue to deepen over time. And you'll notice your breath changing a little bit, going between deeper breaths and lighter breaths, particularly as the body starts to relax. If you find that the body isn't able to relax, that you're not feeling even just a subtle shift through this gentle, open attention, you can generate a thought just to let yourself know it's okay just to be here. It's okay to just relax for these few minutes of meditation, 20 to 30 minutes. It's okay to let go of concerns. This time of meditation, it's about just sitting, just being, letting go of the doing activity for a little while. And just resting into being, the natural state of being. So it's natural that as we do this, as we enter into this experience of just being, Of course, we'll notice the various layers of mental tension, perhaps emotional tension, and perhaps the predominant momentum in the mind that's still moving with planning, thinking. That's natural. But we just want to notice that as a mental process, habitual mental process that has a certain momentum. It's not a problem, or it doesn't have to be a problem, because it's just an energetic movement through the mind. So let it pass through as a bird flies past your window. No need to try to grab it or push it away or do anything at all with it. It just moves through. But allow your attention, if you can, to remain sensitive to the breath and the body. Even as mental, emotional experiences appear and move through awareness. So having the breath as your general anchor, the breath sensations, gives you something to return to bring your mindfulness to bring attention, awareness to. Every time you find you get drawn into a stream of thinking, which will happen, and when it does, we recognize that, wake up out of that, and simply remember the breath. There's nowhere to go to find the breath. It is here. It's just slipped out of conscious awareness, being occluded by attention to thinking and projecting, or the attention that gets caught in projection of thoughts, images, creation of the future or the creation of the past in the mind. It's good to see that with some perspective. And to learn to relax out of that by relying on awareness of the breath. Ever gently breathing in and out, all by itself. And we can learn how to relax with that process. So whatever comes to your senses, whatever comes into awareness, nothing is a problem. Don't make anything into a problem for simply appearing. But if we can be aware of it as appearing, that's really the intent of the meditation. Aware as things arise through the sense doors, any sounds, smells, sights, sensations, thoughts. Aware as they arise, aware as they persist in any fashion, and aware as they disappear, aware as they dissolve. Now, this awareness is natural to the mind. It's the nature of mind. This awareness itself. It's not something that we need to create or even to hang on to in any way whatsoever, because it's naturally ever present. What happens, however, is an occlusion of forgetting, a kind of narrowing of attention when it gets fixated onto any particular appearance, any particular sense experience. And for a while, that experience may occlude the very nature of the mind, which is awareness. But as soon as we remember that, or reconnect with that, or dissolve fixation on passing objects, awareness becomes more apparent. It was never not there, simply occluded as a cloud passes over the sun for a time. So these bodily processes and mental processes that we become aware of as processes, they're natural to the condition of body-mind. So we don't have to fight with them or get rid of them or think they shouldn't be there somehow. We just learn that they have a natural flow, and we learn in meditation just to let them be, to relax our fixation on them by paying attention to that simple process of breath sensation, which is always fresh and new in the present. So it helps us maintain this awareness, continuity of awareness in the present, maintain connection with that, or recognition of that. And so that gives us the, shall we say, the ability to rest out of fixation on any bodily or mental process, and learn to recognize and rest in this, what we call awareness, the field of awareness, naturally present. Always here, always open, responsive, so establishing this perspective, this orientation, this view, we can learn so much about this body, this mind, how fixation and clinging happens, how tension, stress, and suffering arises, and how it can be released or relaxed out of, let go, not fueled. But this process takes time, this learning takes time. So we learn to trust in this awareness. This awareness is the essence of Buddha, awakening, Buddho. Not something to be attained or gained, but something to be recognized and rested in more and more. And from this perspective, everything can be understood. But when the emotions are strong, when the fixations, underlying tendencies are strong, it's easy to lose that sense of refuge. But by simply remembering, encouraging ourselves to remember, we come back into that place of relaxed awareness, where the tensions and stress can subside. And this happens not through cutting off the world or sensory experience, but through right view, right perspective, and ultimately right understanding. So just before we bring this meditation to a close, and just check what's happening for you right now. How's the body? How's the mind? How's the heart? And see if you can just generate a conscious intention of well-wishing towards yourself, towards the whole of this experience, just as it is, embracing everything just as it is. See if you can widen that experience of accepting and embracing things as they are in this moment. Widen that attitude to begin to embrace the whole world, whatever's happening in your immediate environment, extending out into the wider community, your wider network of connections. And out even further into the whole, embracing the whole of the earth, everything that's going on this globe. And wider still throughout the whole universe, extending this intention of well-wishing and embracing everything just as it is. And bringing the meditation to a close now. And in your own time, just returning to this shared space of cyberspace where we're all connecting. And we'll open the chat for any questions that may be arising for people. Okay, there'll be a bit of a delay before I get to see any questions. So there may be some moments of quietude. Sometimes with the that last section of the meditation, where I suggest to just widen your field of acceptance and embracing of everything as it is. Sometimes that can actually show up the deeper layers of hopes and fears that are moving in our mind stream, or even lying latent, showing up those layers of how can I accept everything? I want this, I don't want that. But that's okay. So this attitude is revealing that. And then the more we maintain that attitude of open and acceptance and embracing mind, these things, just like the more surface movements of the mind, they appear and subside. And we feel a deepening, more expansive sense of peace. Okay, any questions arising for people? Usually by this time we have a whole screed of questions rolling through, so don't be shy. So John is asking, please could you offer some further guidance on how to improve one's ability to focus on and stay with the breath? So it's just a process of becoming sensitive to physical sensations. For many people, if they haven't necessarily cultivated that in their lives, it can take a while to find what we call the body. You know, for many people who are focused more mentally, the body sensations can be something that are not necessarily coming into awareness. So it takes some time to recognize sensations. So we've got many different kinds of meditations on our website and on Jayasara's YouTube channel. And there's a whole playlist on Wisdom the Master's YouTube channel of yoga nidras, and which are basically guided meditations on recognizing sensation through the body, sweeping attention through the body. So they might be some good practices for you to do, John, to improve your ability to recognize sensation, physical sensation, and to move your attention to recognize different sensations in the body. So it's a bit of a skill, I guess, you know, that you develop, becoming more embodied. And there's also that set of meditations of mine called embodying awareness and kindness, which very much works with some brief guided meditations, works to guide you to just establish that awareness of body and breath very simply. So listening to guided meditations that help you do that is a great way in, and then you'll find that you can do that more naturally. So it's a skill that develops more and more. Okay. Alex says, is there a stream near the Hermitage? So you're probably hearing some residual sound. I think it's mostly coming from my laptop fan, unfortunately. I try to give it enough air, but and it's not plugged into electrical supply, but nevertheless the fan comes on. And then sometimes you'll hear the wind, and we haven't had rain this morning. Sometimes you'll hear rain, the coast, the waves breaking are a fair way away. I don't think you'd hear those. So we don't have a stream near us. If that was the point of your question, Alex. So someone asks, thank you for this respite of Dharma in this world as it is. You're welcome. Reverend Dillis, how to accept our own humanity at the same time we practice this profound letting go? Well, I think my response would be just, as I was mentioning in the guided meditation, accepting whatever is arising, whatever is present, however our mind and heart manifest is our humanity. This body, mind, heart, in all its complexity and confusion and clarity is our humanity. So embracing, accepting, generating, or opening to the quality of kindness. This is a letting go in and of itself, without the intention to let go. The attitude of acceptance, embracing, kindliness, friendliness is a letting go. What is it a letting go? It's a letting go of the barriers we create mentally, emotionally, physically. And those barriers are the tension. Ultimately. So, Eric says, hello, why don't monks have hobbies? Who said monks don't have hobbies? Since they make the commitment to abstain from desires, is all they do meditation? No, we've got lots of things to do. We've, just like everyone else, there are many duties in life. Just to maintain a physical dwelling, there are duties. To maintain a household, there are duties. To maintain physical well-being, there are duties. To remain connected with community in a wholesome way, there are duties. There's lots of things we do just like everyone else. Just so happens that Jayasara's favorite hobby is reading Dharma and generating videos for her YouTube channel, which is a very fortunate interest and hobby for all of us. One of my hobbies is contemplating the Dharma, love the Dharma. Why? Because I like letting go of suffering. I like creating peaceful spaces to be in. I like being in nature. I like walking. We're actually volunteered to renovate an old caravan for our local Buddhist center. So that's a little project we're involved in, giving, karma yoga, putting in effort, make nice spaces for other people to meditate in. Yeah, there's lots going on. You know, it's just this strange, isolated idea that somehow monastics don't do anything but meditate. But the fact is, you know, meditation is not just sitting on your cushion and breathing. Meditation is extended into the whole of your life, 24/7. So they're just narrow concepts when we narrow the notion of meditation to sitting still and doing nothing else. Mindfulness, as the Buddha said, is the path to the deathless. Mindfulness can be engaged and should be engaged in every waking moment, and even taken into your sleep, your dreams, if possible. So I'm not sure where that idea came from. So some appreciation being offered. I'm early in my practice and just wondering how to practice with grief and strong emotions. So you may not have found our website yet, vivekahermitage.com. If you go there, I've got a whole series of meditations on working with challenging emotions, one of which is particularly about embracing grief and loss. There's befriending anxiety, navigating depression, resolving anger, and looking into desire and fear. So you might find they're both reflections and guided meditations within those audios. So please go to our website and find those. You'll find a lot of good guided meditations on the website to support you in your practice, and a bunch of Q&As as well for the more common and typical questions that arise for people when they're developing and practicing the path. Can you please tell me how to handle the intense energy surges I've been experiencing during meditation recently? The main approach in this kind of meditation is just bringing awareness to that, whatever's happening. So intense energy surges are just that, how to develop and maintain, or not develop, but maintain awareness through those. So it depends what you mean by intense energy. If it's really intense physical energy that's making you jump around through the meditation, your body jerking around, then maybe you can try a different posture. If it's becoming too strong, change your posture slightly. It may be that such energy can result from a lot of pent-up tension in the body. So you could try lying down and just following guided meditations in the lying down posture for as long as it's not encouraging you just to fall asleep. And from the lying down posture, once you feel the body more relaxed, then come up into the sitting posture gradually, slowly, to continue the meditation. So make that, one meditation. You could say, start lying down for 15 minutes and then sit up for 15 minutes or however long you want to, and see how that affects the energy surge. Other kinds of energy surge could be associated with strong joy, strong pitti, the Pali word is, moving through the body. Not necessarily causing bodily movements, but more kind of just a strong energy. So trying to find a way that allows that energy just to move through the whole body. And I usually encourage people to try and just breathe with whatever's happening and allow the energy surges to become smooth throughout the whole body. But it's, that's the general instruction. Depending exactly how this thing is playing out for you, there are ways of working with it. So an Ajahn of Ajahn Mun's tradition told me that taking antidepressants against depression is an offense against the fifth precept. What should I do with this advice? Well, in my opinion, it is not, and a transgression of the fifth precept. The fifth precept is worded, I undertake the training to refrain from consuming any intoxicants that that dull mindfulness or compromise awareness, mindfulness. Any prescription medication that is prescribed to us by medical practitioners for particular conditions are not included in that. Some people can abuse prescription medication, particularly painkillers, and become addicted. So then it turns into, indulgence in intoxicating, because that basic intention, becoming intoxicated, has a kind of, we tend to want to try and get away from particular experiences, and we dull this mind and intoxicate this mind in order to not look at or face into certain things. And, a lot of addiction, at the root of addiction is trauma. There's no shame in that, but we have to learn how to work with the trauma in a way that we can come out of it, rather than just suppressing and obliterating the mind. So that, to me, that doesn't apply to antidepressants and the experience of depression. And we can work very consciously with depression and the experience of depression, even as we are taking medication such as antidepressants. So that's my opinion, and I know many people would agree with me. I've heard many teachers, create this exception around pharmaceuticals that are prescribed to us for particular conditions of body or mind. Now, you may find in your own life that particular prescription medication isn't working for you, and in that case, you need to work with your doctor to find what works for you in a healthy way, because a lot of medication can have adverse side effects. So work with your doctor to find something that works for you with the least adverse side effects. How does one develop self-compassion? I find it easier to wish others well, but struggle with self-judgment and compassion for my own needs. Well, exactly. We all tend to that same pattern, but ultimately, this heart is the training ground. So when we notice that it is hard to find self-compassion or generate self-compassion, and to see through or let go of that self-judgment, as soon as we become aware of those tendencies, that's great. We know then we can see those conditions operating. And so that gives us, right there, we become aware of the place where we need to work. And it's not really work so much as just seeing the tension created by the habitual judging mind, the non-accepting mind, or the lack of love or kindness for oneself, and relax out of that. So we can say it more easily than it happens, but it's not something to engage with conceptually, but to meet within your practice. So we have to meet moment by moment that contraction in the heart or that judging voice. Allow that to be in awareness, and as we breathe out with it, it can be let go of. It may spring back, some of these tendencies, self-judgment, particularly if we've grown up in an environment, say, if our parents were heavily judgmental towards us or others, or usually if someone's very judgmental towards others externally, they can also be holding that attitude towards themselves, whether they're aware of it or not. And we can inherit these patterns or be conditioned when we're growing up in an environment which engages such patterns. So the mind at this level is a very conditioned process. So as you'll know, it sounds like you've been engaging with those meditations on embodying awareness, kindness, and compassion. If you haven't, go back to them, because really those meditations are guiding you to this self-acceptance and self-compassion, which ultimately is the same, whether it's compassion, acceptance for others externally or internally. It's the same thing. But true compassion is plumbed inwards. If you really can find that place of compassion and acceptance for oneself in all one's humanity and all one's failings and imperfections, you found the key. And then compassion for others arises naturally from that place, not as a concept, but as an ability or a capacity to recognize suffering and embrace it so it releases, not rejecting it. So someone says, can this awareness lead? I think it's lead one to I am. Well, in effect, this awareness is the I am. Nisargadatta describes, when he talks a lot, just being aware of I am. It's a translation of an Indic word. I'm not even sure what it may be in the original language, but we're stuck with this translation of I am. But when he says, be aware of I am, he's saying it's the basic feeling of being, of presence, of awareness. And we all have that, which is why it forms the center of this Advaita approach. So it's basically mindfulness. Not mindfulness so much of an object of mind, as in a thought or a feeling or a sensation, but this awareness of I am, or staying with I am, is staying with this basic feeling of being, of presence, awareness. So learning how to stay with that. So it's the same thing. How can we take this deep feeling of peace that we feel after our meditation into the day with us? At times the world is so loud. Yeah, so that's a good koan, Joanna. You don't have to, it doesn't have to just stay in the cushion or appear only in the sitting position. But you naturally will take it with you into your day. You can't not. But as you say, at times the world is so loud. So then the sounds, particularly if you're living in a city or working in a city, there's a lot of input, sense data, a lot of sounds, a lot of activity in the visual field and the energetic field. We have to make decisions fast, lots of this kind of thing. But we can learn to relax with that. In this meditation earlier in the session, I was focusing on this orientation and establishing the view or perspective, resting in awareness itself. So that is exactly what you can take into your everyday life. It's still the field of awareness. There's just more sounds and sights entering. But once you establish this view more and more, you can recognize the coming and going of such things, and gradually you're less and yet less reactive to them or preferencing this and that. It can still have an effect. It can jar our energetic system. But the less you cling to it or wish it were otherwise, the less it has a negative impact. So I guess the ideal is that when we learn to rest in awareness more and more, whether little activity is happening or a lot of activity is happening within that field, awareness itself is the holding, is the refuge, and mind, let's say, or attention learns not to fixate or hang on to or get involved in too much push-pull. So it's a bit of practice. But don't believe it's just for the sitting, these feelings of peace. As I was saying earlier to someone, meditation is mindfulness in every posture, sitting, standing, walking, lying down, in every activity or non-activity. There is this presence, awareness, and orienting to that, resting in that, one can still engage with the world in a less and less reactive way, with greater and greater understanding and perspective on these things. I've been in recovery for 8 years, but letting go of the details of thoughts fly is still so hard. Can you please give me some more strategies so I can get to that place of being? You're already in that place of being. You're not separate from that. It's just that your attention is reacting to the various thoughts coming and going. Liking this thought, not liking that one, wanting to get rid of this, wanting to keep that. So it's about relaxing the push-pull of wanting and not wanting by trusting in this awareness, recognizing awareness. It does take some practice, Sheila. So if you listen more and more to guided meditations, that's exactly what will give you the means and the pointers for allowing that to happen. But you're never separated from being, from awareness. It's always with you. So every moment in the day, no matter what circumstance you find yourself in, no matter how much pressure or stress, there's that ability to recognize awareness itself is ever present, being itself. And actually, that awareness is untouched by the stream of activity within awareness, even as its capacity embraces the lot. So it's just our habitual reactivity that tends to generate a lot more stress in the field. So coming to recognize that is the way that it is naturally let go of or relaxed out of. But listen, I would recommend you just keep listening to guided meditations, and that they will keep giving you the pointers so it becomes second nature. So just scrolling to find the questions. Thank you for your comments. I'm not reading them out just so as we can come to the questions, but I appreciate them. Mindful caravan renovation. Do a video. Yes, that might be a bit complex. It's been thoroughly stripped out, and just as an aside, it was not what I was wanting, not what I was hoping for. We were just going to do a cosmetic facelift, and then discovered that there were more problems in the hidden in the walls and ceilings of this old caravan. It's just like meditation, isn't it? Just like entering in the mind. You think you can just do a cosmetic job and everything will be all right. Everything will look good. But no, there were bad scents coming from within the walls, floor and ceiling. There you go, just like the mind. And so it had to be stripped out. So fortunately, I don't have the strength to do that. So fortunately, we've got some younger volunteers who've been able to do the hard grunt work. Well, I'm primarily designer and project manager, but it's not without its stress. I have to spend a fair bit of time researching and see my mind fretting one way or the other. But it's perfect for practice. These tendencies will arise and keep arising until they're really seen and understood and either embraced or rested out of, whichever way you want to talk about it. Being in the present eliminates all suffering. That's a question. Eliminates all suffering? When one is fully able to be in the present with right understanding, which is the awakened awareness, vijja, or that which undermines avijja, ignorance, that is a full understanding, a right understanding of the Four Noble Truths of suffering, how suffering arises, how it ceases, and how it comes to be completely abandoned or no longer picked up, no longer created. So this level of being eliminates all suffering. So it's both the nature of being as it is, but with insight and what we call right view, right understanding in its fullest measure. Great. Lately, I've been noticing my ego has a negative side. Only lately. Pretty much the definition of ego means you've got this, is this, there's the dark and the light, there's the shadow, and there's the obvious persona, and then there's the shadow side. The ego is just created, and so it has that. So lately I've been noticing my ego has a negative side, but also a positive side. Is it possible to live in harmony with the ego? If my ego dissolves, I am left without the sensation of, I am left without the sensation of self. Yeah, we have different notions and ideas, what we mean by ego. It's not a thing you can find. It's it's basically a concept and a habit pattern, mental emotional habit pattern. The sense of self, the personality factors come together in a particular way. So it depends what we mean by ego and how we talk about it, because different people will relate to it in different ways. But it is a conditioned habit pattern. But it's also being conditioned to know how to function in the world. So it has a certain functionality. It doesn't have to be destroyed. But maybe, we can talk about, becoming aware of the shadow side or the negative side. Then it's about finding balance, become aware of what has been suppressed, oppressed, and pushed out of awareness. The stuff that we don't like can, be festering there in the shadows and then come out through aversion, anger, hatred in different ways. So really through the power of awareness, this stuff gets processed into awareness. We awaken to all of it and discover for ourselves what's worth acting on and what needs to be refrained from acting on in terms of the unwholesome impulses, not suppressed or repressed, but allowed to subside. It is possible to live in harmony with the ego, even when the negative stuff still plays out. If you have this right perspective, this right view, you know and see it exactly for what it is. So it's like just patterned tendencies that you can see through and not have to engage with, but can also have compassion for. So basically, they can arise and dissolve in the heart of compassionate awareness. And the insight that goes along with wise right view or wise perspective is that you see that this stuff is not who and what I am. It doesn't constitute a permanent self essence. They're conditioned patterns of ways of thinking and conceiving of self and the world. And as such, they don't have any power unless we're deluded by them, believe in them, and act out of them. What is the Pali or Sanskrit word that is translated as mindfulness? Are there other translations that you like or find helpful? Well, the word is sati in Pali or smrti in Sanskrit. And it is to this day still discussed by academics and translators as what is its true definition. So mindfulness is the English word that has generally been adopted within the Buddhist tradition to translate the word sati, and it works pretty well. But I find that mindfulness, the word, can become a little bit abstracted, or it is abstract in itself, and these days it gets used a lot, so it can get overused to the point that it becomes quite conceptualized. And we think we have to do mindfulness. I have to be mindful. I have to be more mindful. We can start to take on this concept as something I'm good at or bad at, something I need to do more of. I need to get more mindful. I'm so bad, I'm not very mindful, this kind of stuff. But really, the essence of mindfulness is what I try to convey in the meditation guidance. And you'll hear that I use various words such as presence or awareness. Just resting in awareness, recognizing awareness is mindfulness. Remembering the breath, remembering the body, sensations here and now is mindfulness. Paying attention to a feeling of relaxation is mindfulness. So you have these different expressions, yeah? Paying attention to, recollecting, remembering, being aware, being present. All of these things are different ways, or in the Advaita sense, stay with the experience of I am. That's the Advaita, one of the main Advaita instructions, which doesn't always go well with Buddhist instructions, because I am in the Buddha Dharma is much more used as this concept that arises of me, mine, I am, which is which is the process of attachment, identification, and clinging, which needs to be ultimately transcended or relaxed out of, or seen for how it works. Yeah. So I hope that helps a little bit. Of course, we can get down to very fine distinctions between mindfulness and awareness, but I won't go there right now because it gets a little bit more particular. So, according to Ajahn Mahabua, our most likely destination in our next life will be hell. Even if we do a lot of good karma in this life, I'm very afraid of my next rebirth. Any advice? Look, I respect Ajahn Mahabua very much, but I don't take on that particular what shall we say, statement of his as true. Like Ajahn Mahabua was a very, very colourful character, a colourful personality, and is very forthright and expressive. And many of his Dharma talks, the context was his monastery, Dharma Sala, where everyone gathered and would listen to Dharma, and not only the monastic community, the lay community, he was very familiar with. And Ajahn Mahabua could be very provocative in the things that he said. He was a very provocative character and a very funny person, but very provocative. So you have to understand that Dharma talks were always given, even from the time of the Buddha, in a particular context to particular people. And often when, they get translated and published and we're reading this Dharma in many different contexts, and we take everything that an Ajahn says to be true, every statement in and of itself, such as it's our most likely destination, our next life will be hell. We don't see the humor in that. We don't see the provocation. We don't often recognize what has he said before that to context this statement. What does he say after that? Everything is contextual, and meaning is found in context. And often we lack context with a lot of these statements taken out of context. That's not what the Buddha said. Hellish mind states are a possibility. The fact that you said, I'm very afraid of my next rebirth, right there in that moment of fear is already a hellish state. It's painful. Fear is a painful state. The encouragement from the Buddha is to, there is within this notion of the cycle of rebirth is that beings are born, reborn according to their karma. So part of the path is to generate wholesomeness of body, speech, and mind. Not just so we don't end up in hell, although if that's the main intention that drives you, that's okay. But living in this world and generating wholesomeness of body, speech, and mind is of benefit to all beings. It's the basis of relational harmony. Letting go of the unwholesome is not only bringing benefit to the world, but it's bringing benefit to this heart and this mind. And that in itself is the generator of happiness, of a sense of okayness, of a sense of safety, of a sense of blessing. So you see there, it's not necessarily about that being the cause of next life in a pleasant state. Right here and now, it's felt as pleasant. Engaging in the unwholesome isn't just a cause of future suffering, but it's suffering here and now. And so the only liberation possible is recognizing the here and now of what generates, of what is the cause of wholesomeness. of wholesome states of mind and what is the cause of stress in negative states. That's where we need to see. So right here in this moment, I would say your belief in that statement, your belief in that is generating that unwholesome feeling of fear. But right there, you can let go of that. It's not to say that unwholesome activity of body, speech, and mind won't generate unpleasant states. That's their nature. They're unpleasant, they're deluded states, and they generate more stress. But if we can see that for ourselves with clarity, the wisdom mind steps out of it or learns how to step back from it. So we rely on mindfulness and wisdom to guide us. The Buddha is this awakened awareness that can see and discern the path to cultivate, which is the path of the letting go of suffering, and what to abandon, the causes of suffering in the moment, the clinging in the moment, the identification in the moment. So there's no need to fear. You may experience fear, and I'm not saying that's a problem, but how to let that go is your inquiry. How to rest out of that fear. Take refuge in the goodness of your own heart. Awareness itself is not stained even by the wholesome and unwholesome intentions that arise. But when those unwholesome and wholesome factors aren't understood and seen clearly, when attention engages with them, then that's the generator of rebirth. In the next moment, the conditions for experience arising now and in the future, whether it's the next moment, 2 days, 3 years, or if you believe in rebirth, future lives. So to understand this process of cause and effect, you don't have to believe in future lives. You just see how the mind works here and now, the cause of suffering here and now, and the cause of peace here and now. And just like when the hand grasps a burning hot coal, once we realize where the pain's coming from, it's automatic that the body lets go. You don't have to say, let it go, come on, let it go now, let it go now. Once it realizes the source of the pain, this whole system lets go. So the focus is on clearing up delusion, seeing clearly, and your refuge and awareness supports that awakening. The clearing of delusion, so letting go happens. It's a natural process. I have an aversion towards committing to a religion as I enjoy the teachings from various religions. I do feel connected with God and my life. Is there any concern with just being a mindful person? Any concern with just no concern? That's great. That's great. As you see on Jayasara's YouTube channel, Wisdom of the Masters, there are teachings from all traditions across the world, and the masters who have really understood within those traditions, these teachings are all relevant. They use different language, but the languaging are just means, skillful means to point to the reality. Someone is asking, this might be related to the self-compassion question, but I was wondering how to practice with the 3 conceits, especially the worse than. So 3 conceits this is talking about what we call the conceiving mind or mana. It tends to think, it's about thinking through comparison. I'm better than others, I'm worse than others, or I'm the same as others. Or similarly, they're good, they're bad, they're the same as me, whether it's internal or external. So this is just an example, I'm worse, I'm better, I'm the same as. It's based on conceiving of a self. And this is where I was saying the difference between the Advaita I am and the I am conceit in the Buddhist teaching. The conceit I am is very much trapped in dualistic notion of self and other, this separation. And its process, its way of expression can be seen and heard through this comparison. And we compare ourselves not just through discriminative, discursive thinking, but we're actually comparing ourselves to so many things all the time, and comparing our experience. Just things like, cooking a meal or having a meal. Is this nicer than yesterday? Could I make it better tomorrow? Comparing, this tastes nice, but it's not as good as the last one. This tastes bad. It's not as bad as something else. There's this comparison going on all the time. And this is just something to wake up to. And different people have different tendencies, just like some people will tend to blame other people for things going wrong, not the way they want them to be. They'll blame others or God or the political leaders or whoever, different subsections of society for being the problem. And then there are those of us who actually look more inwards and tend to think, I'm the problem. This is not right with me. Everyone else is okay, but I'm not right, not good for whatever reason. So many different flavors of that tendency can appear. So it's all based on comparison, all based on the delusion of I am, whether our tendency is to blame outward or blame inwards, to explode or implode. So the general direction in Dharma practice is just to see these conditioned patternings for what they are. And when we see them clearly, that's when letting go can happen. We start to see through them as conditioned patterns, arising and ceasing. When we notice their impermanence, their transience, their insubstantiality, they're not always present. They rise and they cease, they come, they go. This is where we start to see they're not a me, not a mine. They don't constitute something to be called me or I or this is me. It's not mine. They're conditioned patterns. They come and go. If we don't see them as that and understand with right perspective the deluded tendencies we identify, this is me, this is mine, this is what I am. I am really bad or really good. They are really bad, or they're the problem, or I'm the problem. This is all just a movement of aversion, delusion and aversion, based on identifying with something that has arisen. We've not seen it's impermanent. We've not seen it's not self. We've not seen that through identification and grasping it, dukkha is generated, suffering, tension is generated right there. And as long as it's hung on to and fought with and struggled with, more and more dukkha and pain and stress is generated until that clear seeing happens and it just let it go. And so we need to rely on awareness itself to let these things move through. Awareness itself, ever present, like space. But without recognizing that, we tend to get caught in the turbulence. When we recognize awareness itself, we learn how we can relax out of the turbulence, or how the turbulence is just engagement or a loss of perspective. When perspective is regained, turbulence disappears. So this is the power of meditation or practice. During meditation, I experience a deeply locked, vivid memory with strong nostalgia. It's cool to explore its details, but might distract focus from awareness. What would you suggest when these arise? Well, you're seeing it clearly as a memory which attention is getting locked on because of nostalgia. So the nostalgia is the desire, the liking, I want this, which fuels the locking onto it. But if you can just see that for what it is and see that the memory is just a blip, it's just an image arising in the moment, and then attention locks on because of desire. I want more of it. I want to indulge it. Let's look at all these lovely details again. Yum, yum, yum. And you notice, attention is siphoned into this mind creation, imagination. And as soon as you recognize that, you can recognize the context of awareness itself, and that whole mental construct dissolves by itself. So there's a lot of Dharma in that that you can explore. So what would you suggest when these arise? To see that they arise, to relax out of the desire to lock on by just recognizing awareness itself, connecting with the present moment experience of breath sensation, and be brave enough just to let go. And what I mean is to maybe, what is it to not follow the desire to, tunnel in to that memory. Just see memory as memory. It's a moment, an image, a conditioned, associated construct re-arising. The more you indulge it, the more it'll return because you fuel it, so it'll return. It's the conditioned patterning. The less you indulge it, the less it'll return. This fuel. Do we give more fuel to the fire to keep it going? Or if it's just see it for what it is, if you don't put more fuel on it, certain patterns just will fade out. How do you control thought sharing or picking up on other people's thoughts? You don't control it. It can happen. Just recognize it. I've lost that thread. I've bumped down to the bottom. Okay. So sometimes you're never sure if it's other people's thoughts, which is the chicken, which is the egg. If we share space with people a long time, we can become more sensitive to thoughts, intentions in the field. Where exactly they're generated is not always clear, but just simply knows whether they're other people's thoughts or our thoughts. If you want to claim them, they're just thoughts. They have the same character. They arise and cease. They're impermanent. They're unsatisfactory. They generate suffering if you identify and grasp at them, or rather, the thoughts don't, but the grasping itself is cause of suffering, and they're not who and what you are, or who and what other people are. So the one peculiar aspect of mindfulness practice, as in the 4 foundations of mindfulness that the Buddha taught, was that we practice mindfulness with self and others. So we're always still conceiving of others or perceiving of others, whether it's their body or their thoughts or their mind states or emotions or ways of being. We still bring mindfulness to that as just what it is: perceived thoughts, feelings, perceptions, sensations, mind states. They're just that. And they all have the same characteristics of impermanence, transience. They're changing phenomena, cannot provide fulfillment, whether grasped at or not grasped at, or satisfaction. They're not defining who and what we are. They're conditioned processes. All of the same characteristics to be recognized, to be awakened to. The awakened one has woken up from what condition? From the condition of sleep. We awake from the delusion, the sleep of delusion, the sleep of confusion, the sleep of not seeing things the way they really are, from the mind that concocts illusory, imaginary things and the stuff we get trapped in. Could you expound upon the variations or similarities of mindfulness? No mind, spaciousness, and emptiness. I see the similarities of mindfulness, or no mind, spaciousness, and emptiness. Well, as I was saying, mindfulness, it can have layers of meaning, the word mindfulness or sati. It can be about paying attention, giving attention to a particular experience, maintaining awareness of experience moment by moment, being aware or resting into presence, which becomes more and more established and full. Sometimes within that process, the Zen tends to be a Zen expression, this no mind, no mind. From my understanding, what that's pointing to is when the aspect of mind, which is mentality, subsides, there's no mind. There's just awareness, just pure awareness, no mind. But even as the aspects of mind as mentality appear, with insight, we can see no mind, because insight sees right through appearances as insubstantial. So even as there's appearances such as we call mind, because it's mental activity, with right view, right insight, they become completely transparent. And we recognize the condition of no mind, the emptiness of mind. Now, emptiness can point to the fact when there is no discursive activity. That can be an experience. There's just pure awareness, pure presence, and the mind is otherwise empty of objects. And there's of mind, empty awareness as the nature of mind, simply empty awareness. But in a similar way, that can be perceived and known even as objects appear, such as thoughts or sensation. The insight knowledge can see through such things as transparent without grasping, and perceive the natural spaciousness, natural emptiness of what we might otherwise call the natural mind, as in the big sense of mind, the nature of mind, the Dharmakaya, the Trikaya, bodhicitta, awakened awareness. All of these things can be expressions of awakened awareness, bodhicitta, absolute bodhicitta, the natural empty awareness of mind. So I hope that helps. Is attention just a flicker of energy? Well, technically attention is referred to as a mental factor. Descriptors always fall short, and if we try to get a perfect definition of everything, we end up with an abstracted conceptual construct. But things don't exist in themselves. Their words are designations, but words tend to create the idea of things existing in themselves. So attention is a faculty of mind, a mental factor. You have to explore it in meditation. A flicker of energy, one could call it. A flicker of energy. How would I describe it? Attention is something that can be directed to an experience. So it's an aspect of awareness or consciousness, but it can be directed through intention. Intention directs attention. So you can say, be aware of the sensation in your knee. And then just through that direction or intention, we can become aware of the sensation in the knee. So it's mental energy recognizing let's say a modification in the field of awareness. There's an appearance, there's an expression within the field of awareness that attention discerns, we become aware of. Whether then attention can be trained to stay with a particular object, that's possible, but that's like a capacity of being able to fix the mind through intention. But attention is, the more you explore it in meditation, can reveal quite a lot. At a certain point in meditation, the Buddha encourages the relaxation of intention, to not generate fixing on any particular thing at all, any appearance in the field. And that's like just a resting in pure presence. So one could describe that as a relaxing of attention. But it's like, and these are just my words, don't take them to be gospel. But it's like, I would describe it as this potential of attention, which is it's like a generating, directed energy, mental energy. It becomes subsumed into the field of awareness itself, which is its origin. There's an interesting little sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, and one of those statements, the Buddha says, all things are born of attention. And in that teaching, he's talking about the directing the mind. There are no things appearing in the mind unless attention arises to become aware of it, or for cognition to happen. And as you know, if you get concentrated even on reading an article, for example, or a book, or in whatever work you get really focused on, attention isn't drawn to perhaps other sounds in the field. And yet when you're not so focused, attention can be drawn to picking up other things. So without attention, those things aren't born within the mind. So I would just encourage you to explore that. If that is where your interest is, explore that in your meditation. So in one sense, yes, you could call it a flicker of energy, but it's a generated and can be a process, conditioned process, where attention is drawn habitually to particular constructs of mind, memories or projections. Could rebirth be in each moment? Yes. In our tradition, we talk about rebirth that's happening in each moment, because, and which extends to when this body decays and dies, the mind stream, which is still hasn't yet fully awakened, is still fueled by ignorance, karma, and craving. The teaching is that it finds new sustenance, new fields of being and birth, according to the habitual tendencies of that mind stream, or karma. But really, you see it in each moment. You understand this tendency from moment to moment. It's ignorance, karma, and craving, the Buddha said, were the drivers of becoming and rebirth. So ignorance, once that's uprooted, there can be no more rebirth. That's the main thing. Ignorance and craving. And whilst karma will still play out, if ignorance and craving are uprooted, karma will still play out within this bodily form, but won't be in and of itself, cannot be regenerative of new birth beyond the passing of this body, without the causes of ignorance and craving. Ignorance is simply not understanding, not having full insight into these Four Noble Truths, i.e. what suffering is, how it arises, how it ceases, and the conditions which support the complete cessation of suffering, which we call the path. Okay, so we're coming up to time now, so I'll just take one or two last questions. Struggles to pay bills and to live and clothe oneself can cause anxiety. What can feel hellish enough for some? Indeed, indeed. But finding the right perspective, even with that, can relieve suffering, because I know it sounds hard. Obviously, we need to feel at ease and peaceful. The basics, standards of living are helpful. But even if they're not forthcoming, that doesn't need to be a cause for suffering when there's right perspective. That's a challenging view, But I'll just put that out there. How to maintain awareness moment to moment. Do I remind myself to be mindful, checking if I'm mindful, or maintain a mantra, the breath? Yeah, so as I was referring to, awareness is always present. We just haven't learnt to recognize that and trust that and take refuge in that. So in one way we can describe mindfulness as recognizing that awareness is present, recognizing, waking up. So being mindful of the moment. So yes, reminding ourselves, practicing, sitting, walking, meditation, and just being present with whatever you're doing. Because in our culture, we've been conditioned to a large degree in this modern culture to be multitasking so much. It doesn't mean you can't be mindful with multitasking, but what tends to happen is that we're futurizing a lot. Our attention is just caught in creating futurized scenarios and keeping lists in our mind mentally. And as we're doing one thing, like washing the dishes, we're thinking about what we're going to do next. As we're driving to go somewhere, we're thinking about or already being there and what's going to happen. And so training in mindfulness is learning to come into presence with just what you're doing. It doesn't mean that thoughts and planning can't happen, but you become mindful that that's happening and you utilize that to whatever degree is necessary without wasting more energy on just the perpetual proliferation of mind, which is usually driven by worry and fretting and fear. So with mindfulness, we become far more aware of the influences in the mind, and we learn how to relax attention in the present for the most part. Can you please talk about how inadequacy and pride are two sides of one coin? So I presume you mean, the feeling of not being good enough as inadequacy, and pride as feeling good about oneself. Yeah, so we can flip between these two. Like I said earlier, one is the shadow side. If someone or oneself is demonstrating a lot of pride, sooner or later they'll fall into that place of feeling inadequate again or bad about oneself. So seeing these two as opposites, one can come to see the unity beyond identification with either of these. Really, they're just conditioned processes of mind, bringing compassion to both, but primarily awareness to both is the way to move beyond or to relax out of them. Okay, so we're going to draw this to a close now. We've been online for a couple of hours, and I'm really sorry if I haven't got to your question. We've got quite a few more questions down there, but there's a few comments too. So I'm hoping, as always, that a lot of what I've mentioned in response to those questions that I've spoken to will speak to you and your question regardless if I haven't come to it. And also, if you don't feel there's something, or if you don't feel something that you really need answered hasn't been answered, go to our website. We've got a whole list of questions that have arisen from engagement online, with mostly through Jayasara's videos, but other questions that have come to us that we've responded to, and you might find some helpful tips within there. So for now, I thank you all for joining me and for coming together for this time of practice and contemplating the Dharma. And I wish you all well. Wellness of body, wellness of heart, wellness of mind, and peace wherever you are, whatever you're working with. Trust in this innate awareness. You're exactly where you need to be. Just bring kindness and compassion to the process, to your ability to be with this, and you'll find your capacity to be with these things will expand. So all good wishes, everyone, and 2 weeks' time, Jai Sarah will do another live stream. So until we meet again, take good care. Bye for now.